Welcome back to Maximum News. My name is Max Darrett.
And I am Subsidian, and I always miss my cue.
It's okay. I don't really actually give you the cue to do the cue. The
I
cue.
know, and I
Uh,
always forget. It's great.
it's okay. It's okay. That's not what's important. What's important is the news, and we just like to jump right into it. No sponsorships, no long intros. Let's just do it. Switch. Saib, we were expecting a Nintendo Switch Pro to come out. At least that was the rumor name going around on the interwebs. A lot of people were expecting that at this past E3 at the Nintendo conference that they were
Mhm.
going to announce a new model of the Switch. Specifically, well, this is what the rumor dictated, is that it would have an OLED screen, which would make the colors deeper and all that, and a better screen overall. And it would have 4K capability. Well, a new model of the Nintendo Switch just got announced this past week, and it has one of those things.
Yep.
But, if you were to poll the majority of people what they wanted in a new Switch model, I think the majority of them would have said 4K, right? Well, that's not what we got. We got the OLED screen. Now, some people are happy, some people aren't, but at least we have some confirmation as to whether or not those rumors are true. They might be true, but it might just be a longer ways off than we initially expected.
I am almost positive that they have been delayed with their progression towards what they want to do due to everything that has been happening, and especially the chip and silicon shortage. It's really bad right now. It's really bad right now.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't hold my breath or say that that everything is doomed. It's just they need to find new sources for stuff, and they need to find new ways of doing things. We've been at this crossroads so many times before in the past. For those of you who have been around for a long time and you remember the floppy disk and the CD drive, both of those hit a wall that they said, they couldn't surpass, and then they ended up surpassing it a couple months later. There was a huge shortage of rare earth, especially magnets and some other stuff, which I totally forgot to look up. But there was this one thing that was really hard for them to get. I'm pretty sure it's the stuff they put in batteries that was going into Japan. It got totally shut down. There was only one major source for it in the entire world, even though there's like multiple sources out there. It's just none of those are currently being mined. So, everybody was kind of like, oh no, this is the end of, the technological achievements of the Japanese culture and country. And oh dear, whatever shall we do? And then the Japanese discovered a massive, one of the biggest deposits in the world on an island that they happen to own. So
Hey.
they immediately started to mine it. And now there's a whole business that's being propped up there. A couple towns are experiencing resurgence. That's how this stuff goes. So whilst there is sometimes some hits to the production of stuff, i.e. in this case, I think what we're seeing is because of all of the shortages that we're currently having. I don't think the next Switch was able to contain as many of the upgrades as that I think they wanted to do.
Mhm.
I would have hoped that they would have kind of thought outside the box and maybe try to include a couple different things that maybe didn't require that kind of stuff, that because that's, that necessity being the mother of invention, that's a good thing.
Mhm.
But in this case, I don't think they made that many progressive jumps, in which case it probably would have been better to hold it off until next year, honestly. It's kind of what we're seeing with the other consoles right now, and just focus on games. And right now, Nintendo would have been an amazing time for you to announce a port to a Nintendo service coming to all mobile phones where you could play a whole bunch of old games for a flat fee. That would have been brilliant. And
Yes.
that also would have netted you several $billion. Instead, they chose to do this weird thing with the Switch
Yeah.
instead of
Well,
waiting for, a year or two where they could actually put out a new Switch that actually had a lot of those new features because the technology is advanced, and do something else that's, not where people's attention is right now. Like, again, I really do not understand why Nintendo constantly withholds things that people are begging for. They are begging for it, and Nintendo looks at it and says, no, we're going to do something else. It's like, so much money on the table.
yeah. Well, I think it's just because some of their properties are just so valuable that they'll
Mhm.
do things that are beneficial to them while ultimately making everybody mad, but those people will still end up purchasing their games, which will continuously be at full price. I went to Walmart today and I just noticed that that was a thing. Like Breath of the Wild that came out in 2017, right? Still
Mhm.
on the shelves for 79.99 Canadian up here.
Yep.
Yeah. We kind of already knew that something like this was going to be happening, because we reported on the Maximum News show, I think just a couple months ago, that the shortage in semiconductor chips was not just affecting the games industry, but just worldwide technology production in general. So the fact that
it certainly was. There's a couple militaries that are currently sweating bullets right now. I mean, they're like like it's like actual like literal bullets. Like it's kind of scary.
yes. Oh, I mean, like, yeah, they have the funding to be able to pull off something like that. But it's kind of interesting that we were expecting a Nintendo Switch Pro to come out at all. I suppose we were just hoping that maybe Nintendo had a stockpile of these chips just for them. Kind of like I expect Microsoft to have a stockpile, because I don't think they're actually dealing with this problem right now. But then again, they're not the most, like, they're the least demanded of all the consoles. So I don't know. But I suppose you're right, Saib. I mean, it is disappointing, but you know what? It's completely understandable given everything that's happened in the past year and how that has affected the semiconductor chip shortage. I imagine that now that vaccines are starting to roll out and people are getting back to work, and, you know, we're able to start being around each other again while we're searching for the components that allow us to make these chips, things will slowly be able to get back to normal. I'm sure that a Nintendo probably has the layout for everything that they need. They just need the components, and then they can start putting these Nintendo Switch Pros on the production line. With what we have, though, an OLED's ED screen ain't nothing, and it's appreciated. You know, Nintendo games are pretty colorful, and that'll just allow us to enjoy their visual fidelity even more. So, that quick little thing out of the way, what was the next thing that we had up? It's not the Ubisoft thing, we're saving that. Oh, it's the Dead Space thing. Okay, yes. Yeah, Saib, take it away.
So, Dead Space is now pretty much been completely confirmed, as well as the direction of what they're doing with the title. And so this is EA Motive, and it appears that, you know, they were working on Star Wars Squadrons up until 2020, and then we don't really know what they've been working on since then. So this is something that is kind of good to note, that perhaps they're a year in to working on this.
Okay.
The initial release date was December 3rd, 2020. So, you know, they've basically had most of 2021 and perhaps a little bit beforehand. So typically what happens in game development, this is why a lot of studios work on 2 titles at once. You know, they've got their next project keyed up. It's a very good thing to do, because you have a lot of people such as sound and music and concept artists. When their job is done on your current project, they don't have anything to do unless and so typically you put them to work working on other things, you know, maybe some DLC, maybe you're working on, you know, some other project on another IP, that kind of stuff. So we can assume that the earliest they probably started on this in partial is probably like sometime in 2020, early 2020. They were starting to put ideas together. Maybe they were, you know, calling up some of the older staff, trying to line that up, bringing people on board, getting people moved out. That's a very lengthy process. So that may have been something that was put into the works sometime mid 2020 or even earlier. And then as far as like them actually, like, you know, getting into it full time, I would surmise that they probably started doing that shortly into 2021. So that's what we're looking at for a timescale. So that means that this game is not going to be out this year. Probably not going to be out next year either.
Earliest late 2023, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably at the closest, although I'm not positive. It could be that they were working on some additional stuff, some additional tech, and maybe they have been, you know, maybe they do have a jump start.
You were telling me, I didn't know about any of this before we started, but you got into talking about some of the possible details of what the game will actually be like, and it kind of surprised me, and I'll explain why in a second, but you just tell like what it is, apparently the direction that they're going in.
So this is coming from multiple sites are kind of parodying this right now. So when you have multiple, you know, sites like VentureBeat and, you know, all the other big ones and Forbes and all that stuff, when you have a lot of them reporting the same stuff, it's probably a point where it's not a single person is spreading all that information. A lot of those people are getting multiple sources, and that is all coming out to them, right? So that's typically how that works. And really what you have, or what you normally expect to see, is this kind of like drop of information, right? You have the initial like rumors that are being heard by people who have their ear to the ground, who know some very good sources, that, you know, maybe have a couple of micro drones sitting in a couple of boardrooms, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, just listening to stuff, and they start talking about it ahead of time. And then past that, there's the stuff where 50, 60, 80% of the company knows exactly what's going on. They're talking to all of their friends or to their relatives, and then that info gets out to other sources. So then that's when you start getting multiple sources coming out at the same time for the same groups of people. So that's kind of how that information spread works. So this is what we're seeing currently right now. So this is not confirmed because Motive hasn't come out and laid these plans clearly out in front of everybody in in an actual press release.
Right.
Even though they've been talking to various people, we're still a little ways on this stuff being like 100% confirmed. So that just, you take that, it's a little bit more than a grain of salt right now because there are so many people talking about it and because this makes sense. So let me walk you through what that is. Basically, Motive is coming in. They're taking the Dead Space story. They're modeling it after the success that Resident Evil has had in its rebuilds of the first couple of games. So expect the Dead Space 1 to be the solid foundation in which they build the new game that we're getting from them off on. And they're going to be incorporating a bunch of stuff that appeared in later games and is more commonly seen in other games in the same genre today. They're going to be incorporating a lot of those things into this one, and the story may or may not be a little bit different in comparison to what it was when obviously the first one launched. So that's kind of where we're at. Some people might go, so they're remaking it and they're ruining it. Well, I mean, it is EA. So yeah, that's always a worry that you need to be cognizant of,
right?
For obvious reasons. However, it's not guaranteed that they're going to ruin everything, right? Like there seems to be a little bit of a wind of change at EA. There's a couple new people that have gotten in charge, and they're enforcing and demanding change. If that's the case, then we're going to be seeing, and what we're going to be feeling from the games coming forward is maybe a change in how they do things.
Mm-hmm.
Do I trust them? Absolutely not. And I think the failure on some other smaller parts recently, as well as their corporate entity headquarters, still is so distant from the everyday player who plays games. They are in an ivory castle looking out, and they're looking out and going, oh my, did you hear that people don't have homes? Oh, that's horrible. Oh wait, Charles, I've come up with a solution. Why don't all the homeless people go out and buy homes? Oh, yes, Jim, this is perfect. Oh, you're so brilliant. Oh, that's the level of ignorance that you have at certain corporations at certain times. When they get too big for the britches, when all of the people that, like, these people don't go out, they don't see what's going on. I talk with gamers on every continent regularly. I talk with developers on every continent regularly. Just referencing our last week's story, I spoke with and have been speaking with Japanese developers who have been sick of PlayStation and Sony screwing them over time and time again. That I was talking about what Jason Schreier talked about, last week. I was talking about that over a year ago.
Oh yeah,
in great detail.
He was.
And this is what talking to people gives you. It was really funny. We had somebody new join our Discord recently, and he was shocked. He's like, "You guys don't have a closed Discord?" I'm like, "No." Like, why would I want to cut off communication to my... Now, we have rules on the server, and we have some mods and other people like that, but I want to engage with people regularly. And unfortunately, right now, I don't have as much time to engage as I would like to have, but it's still getting out there and doing that. I can't imagine why people who have a full-time job trying to understand an industry walk out in the industry and say, "Oh, well, sir, I believe that I don't understand a dang thing that's going on here." It's like, amazing. You shouldn't be doing your job. Like, you should be doing the job that you're doing. You have no level of cognizant understanding of what your job entails right now, and you're standing there like an idiot going, "I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what's going on. Oh, gee, look at that." It's like, ugh. So at any rate, I know, slight detour, but do I trust Motive to make a good game? Actually, I do. Do I trust EA that's publishing it to screw it up somehow? Yeah. Yes, I do. So it's this catch-22. I think a lot of these studios that have been given a lot more freedom recently have the ability to make good games. And I even suspect that BioWare now has a new level of freedom. But the problem is that they've been under this thumb of ignorant, stupid, massive micromanaging, controlling corporate entity that doesn't even understand their gamers, doesn't understand why they're voted worst company in the world 2 years in a row. They have no understanding why people hate them or why people are angry at them for their products, and they just don't get it. And you can't, I mean, you don't yell at them, because there's nothing that helps. It just doesn't do anything. It just doesn't help, because they're so outside of what's going on. So again, do I think Dead Space has a chance? It does, but it is entirely dependent on how much EA screws it up. So
Right. I think even though it is EA, if Dead Space were to succeed at EA, it's in the best place that it can be right now in order to be able to succeed. Because as you said, Motive, they did actually a really, really good job with Squadrons based on all the reviews I heard from people. It was also very consumer friendly. It wasn't at the highest price, and I think I think they said they were giving out free DLC. Plus, it's not like every single game that comes out of EA is bad. Yeah, they do all the sports games and all that crap, but we got It Takes Two this past year and A Way Out. Both are fantastic games that came out of EA. We got Jedi Fallen Order, which came out of Respawn, which is fantastic. Apex, and they haven't been doing a lot of really consumer-friendly stuff lately, but it is pretty much still the king of the Battle Royale genre right now, arguably, with the exception of Fortnite.
It's EA's number one moneymaker right now, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's the numbers. It might be FIFA, or I think it might be FIFA. But it's like, it's a thing that they don't want to lose, and precisely. It's so funny what happened in that whole process. You got to listen to like the whole thing that went on there. It's a very long thing. I'll explain it again sometime in the future. But the reason why we got that game, the reason why we have this change at EA and why we got that other Jedi Fallen Order game, all of those things were brought in and were given to EA by them doing this kind of like trickery BSE kind of thing to make waves, and they found out how to like manipulate people, and then the manipulation kind of backfired on them. It was really funny. I'll tell this story sometime in the future here on this channel. I've told it a couple times on my main channel, but it's like, you don't know half of what went on there, and it's pretty darn funny. So yeah.
I just have one last thing that I want to say in regards to this, in the notion that Dead Space would take on sort of a Resident Evil type reinvention or remake. I'm just wondering, like, what would they do to Dead Space to reinvent the formula that's already there? Because I recently went through Dead Space 1 and a little bit of Dead Space 2, and those games, they could do with a graphical update, but in terms of the mechanics, it's still a mechanically solid game. It still holds up like roughly a decade later. I'm just wondering like what they would do. Maybe they just make the more body parts to be able to shoot off. That's the only thing I can think of. But like, can you think of anything they might do?
As far as like, I mean, you can revolutionize the first person aspect of it. You can revolutionize the RPG side of it. You can add a lot more depth there. You can overhaul the lore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can do a lot. Now, are any of those changes needed? I don't know. That's entirely up to the consumer base. If I were in control, I would flesh out the lore a little bit more, kind of open it up so that you have a larger universe to play with. I don't think there's anything wrong with the existing lore that was in the first and second title. I think that the lore overall can be improved, because all lore can be improved. All storytelling can be improved. I'm not hitting or smashing on anything. I'm literally saying it's like they did a great job. I think they can add a lot more cooler stuff and really like open up the world a little bit more and find out a lot more that's going on, and really help to kind of like awaken that to people who enjoy this kind of content even more. I think they can add more interesting characters. I think they can add a ton of stuff. Whether or not that stuff is most of that stuff isn't a hardware thing; it's just a storytelling thing. But whether or not they can introduce some really cool mechanics, like we've been seeing some of the new tech kind of really open up on. I think we're getting there, but we're still quite a ways away. So.
Yeah, I hope that most of all, though, they just go back to what made the first two games so great, which is the atmosphere and the horror, and not try to do what Dead Space 3 did. Please, God.
Yeah, no, I think everybody agrees that Dead Space 3 wasn't a great direction for the game, and I really don't want to see any microtransactions. I don't want to see any of that stupid live service garbage. And again, it's like, I'm sure that if you let EA Motive do their thing, they would do those things without adding that. But we see what happens in corporations when they're like, you know what we need? A bigger bottom line. Do it. Pull the trigger. Squeeze and get blood from the stone harder. It's what's happening with Blizzard right now.
Yeah.
Blizzard is losing players every year. Every year, their overall player base of active users drops somewhat significantly.
Oh yeah.
And yet every year their profits go up. Why? Because they're squeezing their concurrent players harder and harder and harder. Meanwhile, all of the grains of sand that escape from their fist, all of those people that have escaped, I think most of them are not coming back. So eventually, in this business model, all that you'll be left with is a handful of whales, vying for dominance over the hill. And I don't think you'll have at some point you're gonna hit that wall where you're not making any more money, and the money suddenly starts to dry up. Because when you're servicing 10 customers and you do something so bad that 8 of them walk away, you have shot yourself in the foot. If you were serving 200 customers and you did something kind of bad and you lost 10 customers, that's not nearly as bad, even though that's more than losing 8. But that's what some of these companies have been going for. Some of these companies have been going for, we don't care about the people who don't pay us money. All we're going to be focused on is the people who pay us a large amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's only a fraction, and the majority of the people are going to go over to other games, and those games are going to become even more popular. And then before you know it, you'll be at the lower end of the marketplace.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if and when that does happen, that attention will be given over to the people that left Blizzard and started their own company. I can't remember what the names of those guys were.
There's several of them now. There was another one that happened last week. It's been shocking, and the latest company to be created from solely ex-Blizzard employees. That means there's a new company. They're making RTS games, and they're staffed entirely by people who have left Blizzard. Nobody else. Just people who have left Blizzard. And you know what their new motto is?
What's that?
It's reason over ego. It's like that is a slap in the face to whoever was running that similar department over at Blizzard. Because all these guys left and said the biggest problem at the past company that we had in creating good products was somebody's ego. So that is a hard pill to swallow for somebody. Somebody's got to swallow that too, because it's not nothing. It's not nobody.
Mm-hmm.
These guys aren't nobody. These people are like core people that have helped to develop the overall state of the RTS world. These developers.
Yep.
And they all left, and they all said the ego was so bad that we couldn't create. When that's your bottom line, I mean, your financial bottom line is going to be destroyed by that at some point in the future. And it really depends on when and how much you're squeezing those other people.
Yep. It's never just one person. It's always a collaboration. Even when it's somebody who's like a major figurehead within gaming, like Kojima, for example. It's always him plus his team. Hopefully the people will stick by that ethic and create some fantastic games moving forward. Anyways, speaking of live service garbage, Ubisoft made an announcement on their website last Wednesday saying that they are taking the Assassin's Creed franchise in a different direction. Quote, rather than continuing to pass the baton from game to game, we profoundly believe this is an opportunity for one of Ubisoft's most beloved franchises to evolve in a more integrated and collaborative manner that's less centered on studios and more focused on talent and leadership, no matter where they are within Ubisoft. They also added in this little press release that this project they are doing is currently operating under the code name Assassin's Creed Infinity. Now, as for what it means for AC to be more integrated and collaborative, industry insider Jason Schreier is suggesting that it's taking on a live service model akin to Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto 5, but not entirely so. See, there's a little bit of confusion around what the nature of a live service AC game will look like. According to Schreier, it won't be a live service game like Anthem or Destiny, which is good. To quote one of his tweets, he said that instead of a new AC game every fall, there will be one platform that is constantly evolving and expanding with new content. Apparently, there will still be solo, single-player type stuff, but it will just be a part of this expanding platform. Now, Seb, I think this can go one of two ways. It could be done in like a a Hitman 3 type of way, where there'll just be more content released that is attached to that one game. But come on, given that it's Ubisoft we're talking about here, I think we have good reason to be worried that it'll be worse than that, especially given the microtransactions we've seen them put into the more recent AC games like Odyssey and Valhalla, and how those were tied to single player. So, God, Ubisoft.
Another studio that is slowly falling to the consumption of that which is giant corporations,
Yeah.
believing that they know what you want better than you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a tough one. Will it work? I don't know. They have mastered the slow boil. You know, when you compare, this latest one to the one before this one, not the one before, the one with the Greek.
Odyssey.
Yeah, Odyssey. When you compare it to Odyssey, it was clear that the game was designed to play at a certain rate. And then when the game came out, it was like you were constantly hamstringed with the XP gain, with the general direction of the game. You just kept on bashing your head on stuff. And when they introduced, the, hey, pay for an XP boost, suddenly the game felt normal. They have learned to master that release. There's a bunch of other companies that are doing this now. They release a game, no monetization, a handful of clothing mods or customization in the thing, and they're like, that's all the store has. And then people are like, wow, this is great. Then 3-4 months in, oh look, we've added a bonus resource system. You can buy resources now, and we're doing it for those people who just don't have the time to grind everything out. They just want to play, so we're putting that there for them. And then a couple months later, oh look, recent changes to the XP has made it so that your XP gain is very slow. You'll need to buy this stuff in the stores. Meanwhile, all the reviews for the game, all those initial 5-star reviews or 4-star reviews by the fans, the players, the journalists, they're all still there. And they don't mention anything about all these new changes that have come in. So people walk in, they go, wow, there's so much to spend on. But, well, I guess I'll buy that one thing and then that one thing. And then before you know it, you're hooked, line and sinker. And it's getting so bad. So they've learned to master this. So do I trust them? No.
Nope.
Not at all. I suspect strongly that there will be multiple ways that they have learned how to integrate this and abuse it. I'm sure that will be an issue that we're talking about in a couple of years, or even shorter.
I've had, as some of you listening probably already know, I do videos on my personal channel that center around games with great stories. And apparently, from what I understand, because I never played much of the Assassin's Creed games except for a little bit of the first one, the games apparently have a really great story and really great lore, and I've been tempted to get into them. But the problem is, now that Ubisoft is doing stuff like this, it makes me very much less inclined to ever get into the franchise, because after a while, if I were to go through all the games, I would just get to the point where I get to a game like Odyssey, which is apparently 500 hours long, and it really depends on being able to get through it at a reasonable pace, depends on how much money you're willing to put into it. It's no, I'm not going to do that. And it's too bad, because from what I understand, some of the more recent releases in the Assassin's Creed franchise have been pretty good pre the introduction of these microtransactions. Because I've even read reviews from people that absolutely hate Ubisoft, like you and I do, Sib. But even they'll say, hey, these are really good games. But it's just because it is Ubisoft and they're trying to put in their stuff, they ruin it. And gamers have to learn how to just say no to this. If a game that I like introduces crap like this, I just stop playing it. Most recent example I could think of is Crash Team Racing with Activision. I played the crap out of that game. I wanted the less than 1% of people to have platinumed that game on the planet because I loved it that much. And then they introduced microtransactions so that you can get all the skins in that. Nope. And I haven't played it since. And you guys got to do the exact same thing with that. There are plenty of other games that are like Assassin's Creed that you can devote your time to and don't rape your wallet, right? Just why is it so difficult for them? Look, you don't have to release a game every single year. You can make a great single player game that comes out every few years. And doing that will make sure that you have the biggest audience possible, because when you're not doing a live service type game, it will bring in all those people that don't necessarily have the most time for games, but they can save their game. There's a definite end to it, and it's not a continual thing like I mentioned before with Grand Theft Auto or Fortnite. You'll get a great audience there. Plus, you'll have great consumer dedication to you. They'll want to stay with you, and your games will continue to have sustainable income. Even though it might not be as much, at least you'll still have the respect of your consumer base. And that is invaluable. But people will just continue to purchase this stuff, and we will never, ever get another Splinter Cell game. So Andrew, if you're listening to this, I know you've been telling me to get into the Assassin's Creed games. No, and you got to stop paying for them. Anyways,
yeah, I avoid them because of the stuff that I've been seeing since Odyssey, and I just really, I think it's bad, and I think it's only going to get worse. So, but let's end with a nice, happy story instead. So, Baldur's Gate just had their fifth big patch that's coming up right around the corner here. It'll be out on the 13th, so it's coming up right away. There's no major content update in this or class update. Class update, they made this clear. The class update will be out a shorter time span from this patch to the last one. So we're looking probably at less than 2 months. And I think the way that they do things, and I think the way that they love their marketing, I think they want patch 7 to fall on Halloween, or perhaps I'd say they want patch 7 to fall on Halloween. So yeah, I think they gotta get this next patch out sooner and then kind of go from there. So that's kind of my thinking on it. The active roll system, so like, rolling for your situation, so you're trying to pick a lock, and lock, it's a difficult lock to access. They've added a new system and a new roll effect that changes that and improves that system. It looks really cool. I'm really excited to give it a try. They also have done a lot of upgrading to the RPG system, in which normally you would have the ability to pick a background, folk hero, acolyte, urchin, those kinds of things. You can now, when you pick those things, you now get bonuses for when you perform actions that are in line with those backgrounds. So if you're a fan of tabletop RPGs, this again is showcasing another example of where the story, the official single and multiplayer mode of the game, playing through the story, is allowing you to do a lot of cool things that a lot of DMs and GMs, dungeon masters, game masters, have been doing in their tabletop experiences for a while now. So this is very exciting. This is keying up to be the pinnacle in tabletop experiences, probably for the next decade or more, I would say. We're really getting so many options, and all of the options that you've seen in the single player game will come to the multiplayer when they allow you to host and build your own multiplayer experiences that you can play with your friends. And we already know that if they want to, they can take that multiplayer experience. It's not available in the game yet as far as hosting your own story, but when that becomes available, all of the options that are currently in the game will be there. And a lot of that stuff includes going from role to role, so you can tell a story that way. You can DM a story that way. You can have interactions that way. You can introduce mobs and stuff at the click of a button. You can have preset stories, scripts, and events all planned out that you basically drop and go. You have maps and stuff like that you can drop and go. So this is really looking like the pinnacle, the first pinnacle in what I'd say is the tabletop experience that people have been begging to have since Neverwinter. Not the MMO, not the one that's out recently. No, the first Neverwinter Nights game made by BioWare long time ago when the Doctors were still there. It was one of their big releases. And I got to say, I 100% agree. 100% agree. That this is looking really awesome. Camps now change, so when you do rest, a long rest, you get a different camp experience. So if you're in the Underdark and you're crawling through caves and stuff, you go to rest, boom, you're going to be in a cave. If you're in the jungle, you go to rest, boom, you're going to be in a jungle. You go to rest, on a beach, boom, you're going to have a beach. So that's really cool and also pretty exciting too. There's been a tune-up in a bunch of AI. This also now includes non-lethal attack modes, so you can knock people out instead of skewering them with your greatsword.
Oh,
so
Where's the fun
I
in
know. I
that,
was so
though?
disappointed. I was like, why would anybody not want to skewer people with a great sword? I mean, it's just so great.
People
See what
like
I did
me.
there?
I do like. So the
Mhm.
game is. I don't unfortunately know that much about Baldur's Gate, but I do have a couple things I just want to ask. It's in
Mhm.
early access right now, right? And it's coming out in late 2022, like full access.
Full access will be. He did say that due to certain delays with the whole world thing going on,
Mm-hmm.
that the game will not be out for what their first anticipated in-house release date was for, which was, I mean, I think we could have guessed that. I think most people could have guessed that. They've never announced that as their release date and time, but I think we're going to see a delay. I think it'll probably be mid to late next year, I'd say.
Okay.
So we're probably a year, little bit more away. Still makes it closer than Starfield. But yeah, so people have been asking me about the game. Is it going to just be in beta forever? Because there's a lot of games that have been in betas forever, and that's terrible. Like that's honestly terrible. However,
Kind of like
I would
another game
say
with the word "star" in the name.
yeah, yeah, right. It's been in beta access forever. I mean, Fortnite's still beta access. Stupid, ridiculous.
Yeah.
But basically, no, I don't think that what we're going to be seeing here. I don't think we're seeing that situation roll out here. And I think one of the big clues to that is that they've been doing a lot of updating and fixing and tweaking of Act One. But Act One hasn't included new areas, new places, new stuff, new quests, and all that stuff. And we know that they have a huge team that have still been working on those things. The changes that we've been seeing has been that polish layer that only typically one side of the company actually works on. Really, it's not the whole company that's working on polish. That's the case when you get to kind of like the very late stages of development and you're just doing bug hunting. That if that's your thing, then that's your thing, right? So it's not something that I'm worried about right now. Right now, I know that a good portion of their team is working on content that we haven't seen, and the stuff that we are seeing is just improvements and improvements and improvements to existing stuff. And we know that they were working on a class. There'll be a class dropping in the next patch update, which will be number 6, coming out probably somewhere around Halloween or a little bit sooner. If that's the case, then I mean that's great because we're going to be seeing more and more gameplay. He also gave a clue that there will be more races and that they will be adding more things to the game that they've always wanted to, and there's a lot of DLCs and a lot of future road content planned. And again, if you're at all tabletop fan, if you are wanting to get into a tabletop type D&D experience or homebrew, this is the game for you to give it a try. You can wait for the full release if you want, but right now you get to see how they're working with the game and how they're changing the game, and this has been really exciting. It hasn't been like another experience like most other experiences. When you're paying to beta, you don't get a say in what's going on, but they have a super active forum. They are very communicative with the community, and they're constantly polling and asking their community how they think things should react. There was a lot of talk about the combat and how fighters didn't really have that much to do, like in a round. Sometimes they would just go and attack, and it didn't feel as in depth as a wizard who could do a lot more things in a round and have a lot more of an impact on the field than just a character just running to attack. And so they were asking for more, and they were asking for more options and more flexibility. And right away, the head devs came in and said, yes, I agree. This is something that we agree with you on this, and we're going to find a way to improve that system so that you can have a better experience when you're playing this game with your friends, whether it's the story or if you're a GM hosting the experience or if you're a player playing the experience. So if you want to get in, if you want to discover what the whole D&D universe is like, and you want it to be somewhat easy and kind of like wiggle your way around this, Baldur's Gate 3 is coming up as one of the premier things, and I can see so much more going ahead, and I'm so excited for this title. I have never been as excited for a title ever than this one, because this allows us to do so much more than what we've wanted to do for so long. And I'm so excited for that. And that's why I think you should get into this game. It's also a very community-based game. If you got friends, you could play through the story together. You can create characters, drop them in on other people's games, experience a fight, handle a scenario. And then again, once they unleash the mods and I mean, there's tons of mods for it right now, but once they officially release mod support and the ability to host your own games, create your own stories, you're going to have thousands of people creating small enclosed scenarios that you can use as Lego pieces or puzzle pieces to build your own adventure for your friends in your group. And I think that's amazing.
That does sound amazing.
Yeah.
Saib, I think you should get into sales, man. Because
Yeah,
I've
well-
never played any type of like game like this, but you're making me really, really interested. Although I will say, in terms of that type of genre, I think before I get into Baldur's Gate, I have to play a game called Planescape Torment. Because aside from Persona and what's the other one? Berserk, that's the one thing that everybody's been wanting me to cover on my channel.
Well, tell you what, how about you save your first experience of playing this game to play co-op with me, and we'll do a whole run through of the entire story, and we could probably do that on stream too.
A Baldur or Planescape?
Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah, sure, dude. I'm down with that.
I think that would be pretty cool. I think we could have a lot of fun with that.
All right, cool. Yeah, maybe when I have more time to stream on my channel, we could do it there, or on yours, whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyways, guys, that does it for this edition of the different. What the hell am I talking about? Sorry, I have too many shows. Thank you for joining in for this edition of the Maximum News Show. We had a lot of stuff to talk about today. We went pretty long, but it was a very, very good discussion. I want to thank Saib for doing the show with me as per usual. Saib, do you want to tell people where they could find you on the interwebs?
Find me at the Triple S League, and that's on the YouTubes. We've got 2 channels there. Type in Triple S League, and you'll find us. You'll probably find both Triple S League and Triple S Podcast. And then I'm on the Twitter with under Triple S League. And I again, Twitter is one of these things where I don't like doing a ton of it, but you know, I try and do as much as I can there. So follow me there, interact with me, and then of course, join our Discord, and you can find that info on our main YouTube page. And then we're also on all of the others. So the Rumbles, the BitChute, and the others. We're on most of those as well.
He's everywhere. I need to learn how to diversify. I
am also in many boardrooms via small drone devices.
It's true. And you guys could just find me just anywhere on YouTube and on Twitter, just at MaxDarrett. We'll put links to all that in the description box below. So that's it. Until we do this again next week, just stay yellow until we get back. Bye-bye.